The pirates. Professor, do you think he was being paranoid? One of Valiance's students asks, and she considers. It entirely depends. The mostly closed-off entrance to the site means that natural-born predators will have to be small enough to fit through the cracks or survive off what can, which would place it at only a mild danger, even if it is incredibly hostile. Perhaps a moderate one if it also has axiom capabilities of some kind. What about booby traps? Those are a lot rarer than most people give credit for. You only trap a place that you have no intention of going through or have a simple way of avoiding. No one wants to navigate a minefield when they're getting up to pee in the middle of the night. But what if the place is important? There's generally also warning signs about traps. They're expensive and annoying to set up, so if someone can be warded away with a simple sign, so you don't have to reset the trap, then it's all the better, Valiance answers. I've personally spotted several places like that and navigated them. The trick is to keep your eyes open and to remember you have more senses than sight. Open yourself to the sounds and smells of the environment. Let yourself feel its presence both physically and in the axiom. If you don't know what it is, then don't touch it, and remember that things are delicate. It spares you a great deal of grief in the long run. What kind? The kind where you spend literal weeks slowly piecing back together a delicate and axiom-sensitive artifact by hand and with such a level of precision, you could still replicate it 30 years later by memory alone. Professor Valiance says as she still mentally clenches at the thought of that fucking crystal flower. That its final few threads of axiom that held it aloft were severed by the green-tinted light she shone into the room ahead of herself had been nothing short of aggravating. She still kind of hated flowers. The small drones and delicate equipment slowly chips away the rubble closing off the site, and old stones are sent tumbling out and away from the site without harm. It takes a full half hour for everything to be moved away, and the platform slowly moves through what was clearly a vehicle entry bay. And before they emerge, small sampler drones are sent ahead of them to get a taste of the atmosphere. No doubt tainted by Franklin, but he seemed all right after a few lungfuls. But he's also human, so for all she knows, there's nothing but poison up there, and it smells like his mother's cooking. The scan comes back clear. From the look of it, this cave has been used by small scavengers and other bits of sea life no bigger than someone's fist as a shelter against larger predators. With all the little bits of leftovers and stinks that such animals making use of the water and floor would cause. The air is acceptable. Local vegetation has moved in enough, and the scum in the water has kept the air at a breathable state, Professor Valiant says before turning to better face her class. Which means no matter how dirty, smelly, or gross the plants look, no laser scouring them because they're making the air we breathe. Also, it could damage the site. Her warning given, they fully emerge and start hovering over the water. The protective shield slowly shifts to allow more harmless things from the environment in and allow solids to shift through, and Professor Valiance initiates a scout and sample protocol in the drones, even as she turns on red wavelength lights and ensures that the life support goes into area assistance mode. Just because the first room is fine to breathe in, doesn't mean that something fouler might not be inside. The drones will give them a very basic layout and test the air ahead of everyone. All right, girls, recording devices at full power. We are stepping into history. But not making it, someone quips. No, not making it, unless you want to make a record for the biggest screw-up imaginable, in which case you have a lot of work ahead of you. You need to be a dedicated professional to pull off that level of foolishness, Professor Valiant says. Now we can actually start before we leave the vehicle. Observe the floor. What can anyone here tell me about the patterns? Those are bodies! That's right, we have dead bodies already. Coupled with the destroyed entrance with a pile of rocks in a position just perfect to prevent easy escape, it says that this place was left behind in trying circumstances, perhaps violence, perhaps not. But we have death and destruction already. Where are the prints? Someone asks. A secondary thing to notice is that despite Baron Smith teleporting in here for a time, there are no visible prints, meaning he stayed hovering off the floor itself and in that manner preserved the site. However, that much axiom usage in one place will alter the local axiom flow, meaning that while he preserved the site one way, he tainted it in another. Professor, you said perhaps violence, perhaps not. What would kill these people and blow the entrance to this place if not violence? Containment. A virus could have broken loose and they might have destroyed the way out to prevent its spread. Thankfully, at these temperatures, you would need a truly unusual or exceptional strain of virus to actually survive the many years which have passed since this place was contained. But it could still be around. If the virus was that robust, it would already be in the ecosystem. Remember, that barrier had tiny holes in it. Of course, it may not be a virus. It could be a mold, a parasite, or any number of things. Which is why we're not leaving this protective vehicle until the area is fully scanned on low power. Now, who can tell me what these scanners are tuned for specifically? Airborne particulates. Insects. Not me! Another Drin, this one a student and second cousin of Professor Valiant's, protests to the amusement of the class. Leanna really needs to either up her grades to make the class clown routine more tolerable, or drop the routine. She's not funny enough to make up for her laziness. Not helping Leanna, Professor Valiant states and clears her throat. Yes, particulates and insects are two of them, but it also scales down to airborne bacteria and viruses. This is because many ancient sites are only sites because the people living there have left and few people leave their homes without good cause. A popular one of which is a terrible plague that drove them off. Hence why it is standard procedure to scan and test the air of all sites to ensure that there is not some native killing machine invisible to the unassisted senses in the area. Professor, the drones are coming back. Excellent, she says, and the little disc-shaped robots all float over and flash green light before lowering and docking to the undercarriage of the vehicle. All right, girls, green lights across the board. Mind yourselves, but enjoy yourselves. If she had been standing at the threshold to the now lowered walkway, she would have been trampled. Last out is Delicate Flutter, or at least that's how her name translated out of Trill speech. The eartheny girl had scared the living hell out of her class mid-lesson when she suddenly slammed her claws down into her desk and ripped herself out of her own body. 5 students had run screaming from the class and another 2 had fainted. That the girl seemed unchanged at first was odd. Then in the following weeks, the girl had been caught eating things that were tripping all sorts of chemical sensors. And she also tripped them herself now, as she had digestive juices better suited to a Canador. But worse somehow. Then came the blow-ups, because the sweet, timid, inoffensive eartheny had decided that she had more attitude than a Lidris with a frenzy patch on each body when pushed. This was her first day back after her suspension. Delicate Flutter, a moment please, Professor Valiant says, and the delicate-looking moth girl pauses. I'm not going to... I know, you just had too much that time. I'm just wondering about the humidity. Professor Valiant plays it off, and Flutter seems to think. I'm all right. There's no boys here, so I can only dream. Delicate Flutter notes as she steps out, the tiny soft little slippers that protect the world around her from her foot claws giving tiny little thumps as she goes. Hey, over here. This was a lopin', one of the girls calls out as the scanning device in her hand visible runs gentle beams. We've got another this way, another student says. The beams on her device are a different color, but that's manufacturer touch, not actually a different kind of beam. Then Liana opens up with a delicate sweep in the electromagnetic spectrum, and everyone with the appropriate senses pays very close attention. What the? Delicate Flutter asks a few steps away, and everyone who sensed the hidden passage glances at each other. All right, students, we have found a previously hidden route heading down. Who here remembers the proper protocol? Professor Valiant asks the class, and to her delight, there is a flurry of motion as the immediate area around the covered hole is scanned over and over again with progressively more intrusive methods until it's deemed completely viable to simply pull it up and clean off the area. A laser scouring reduces the dirt to carbon, and a bit of brushing later reveals handholds that were previously hidden by weeds. One final scan to get ahead of potential surprises, and the door is pulled on. To no avail, so a slight amount of axiom is used, and a screeching, creaking sound fills the room as the hinges, which are more rust than metal now, protest audibly. There is a pause in the room, and before Professor Valiant has to say anything, Liara signals for a drone to go down the gaping dark shaft leading into unknown depths. Very good. Now who remembers the next step? And now we wait, Delicate Flutter says, leaning over and looking down, her antennae sweeping forward and all but sticking themselves down the shaft. Flutter, lean back, please. Valiant says, and her little tidbit about not crowding becomes prescient as something destroys the drone with a snap and a crunch. What was that? Delicate Flutter demands. I'm not certain. I wanted other students to look too. Valiant says before considering and then picking up a piece of dead crab off the floor. The nearest students lean back away from the bit of gross slimy shell, but then realize what's up when it starts glowing brightly and is held over the shaft. The active danger means we can take some risk of damaging the site. Lives are more important than an immaculate workplace. That said, she drops the tiny carcass and it tumbles into the darkness before it begins to illuminate water and something snaps out to devour the light. Hostile animals. Good to know. Anyone identify the species? Or do we need another look? It had a triple bill mouth structure with 3 eyes interspersed between the bills. Mottled brown and black coloration. Something that moves like that can only be an ambush predator. We saw only a fraction of it, but something that big would also need a lot more food than whatever little bits of nothing would follow into this thing, if anything fell into this thing. Ladies, this is the lair of a trine eel. They do not carve out their own homes and never lair near their own food sources for fear of the scent of their meals or scraps bringing in potential rivals. Which means we have a secondary entrance hall, or more likely exit hall. This is a classic smuggler's shaft. No doubt it was used by whoever blocked off the main way in or out to escape, and might have been the reason behind this abandonment. After all, a deadly argument after things go missing is a good cause to leave an area. Okay, but why did it eat the drone and glowing crab? Their favorite prey animals are phosphorant fishes. They have a tendency to turn ambushes set up by glowing bait back on the predators in question. That's not to say they always win, but they win consistently enough for some of them to reach an impressive size, like our friend down the smuggler's shaft. Is it a danger, Professor? They can't climb or even breathe outside of water. So long as we keep respectful distance, it's harmless. Now close up the shaft. This is an interesting thing of note, but looking into that place is a thing for later and for reinforced armor as well. Trine eels are very territorial.